Time for the business news then. Owen's here. First day of the new quarter, new trading quarter, of course. The Nikkei extending those record gains, going up and up and up, aren't they?
Yeah, up nearly 20% for the first quarter, Stuart. Those are the figures in over the weekend. And as you say, this is for the Nikkei, I should say, its biggest gain in 24 years. Its biggest gain for 24 years. It has given up some of those gains early this morning in the afternoon trading session, just edging down slightly, around 0.5% up, but still very much in the green. Just Hong Kong and some concerns about the real estate bubble there, letting the side down. The Kospi, you can see, also in the green. Shanghai Composite, we should note, is closed today. I'll just mention briefly while we're talking markets, some news in a little earlier. DBS Group, that's one of Indonesia's bank, is paying $7.2 billion to take over its rival Danamon Indonesia. That's the biggest bank takeover by a Southeast Asian bank so far.
So Asian markets reflecting that optimism then that the global economy is on a surer footing, but tensions, well, they persist really, nowhere less so than Ireland. The Republic has won widespread praise for driving through a bailout without the kind of dissent that's plagued Greece, but that is now changing. Millions of Irish people refusing to pay a new tax, a sign, well, that they've had enough of austerity.
For the Irish, enough is enough. Protesters want a boycott of a new €100 flat tax in property duties.
Now, people are struggling out there. Soon the better the government realises that, you know.
The majority of people in this country do not want to pay this tax, and we're going to fight it all the way.
I don't have €100. I can't give her a €2 a week.
People have said no, and that's the message, that we want the tax scrapped. It is no mandate in society.
The deadline for payment was on Saturday night, but less than half the nation's 1.6 million households had paid up. A struggling Dublin gained a €67.5 billion credit line from the EU and IMF in 2010 to help pay its debts. But the condition was reducing its deficit and raising taxes. Ireland's now seen 5 emergency budgets in 4 years, and with a staggering economy hit by a recent dip in exports, 14% unemployment and now in recession, it's likely to see several more years of austerity. Despite simmering discontent, the coalition government seemed certain most of the country would still back it.
The Irish people have stepped up and registered in their hundreds of thousands, and for that I thank them and acknowledge their genuine patriotism for this country at this difficult time.
An agreement not to cut public sector pay and jobs has gone a long way to stemming overt protests and strikes. However, the new flat tax rate is meant to rise fast next year, based on property value instead. And that means certain households could have to pay up to 10 times the current rate.
Okay, well, there's plenty of dissent in India right now, particularly directed at Kingfisher Airlines, whose future is looking increasingly shaky. Pilots were due to go on strike over around 4 months of unpaid wages. It's the latest twist in the downfall of one of India's most recognisable brands. Natasha Butler is our correspondent in New Delhi. She joins us now. Natasha, good morning to you. Can you give us the latest on this strike? Because the situation seems to develop by the day right now when it comes to Kingfisher.
Well, that's exactly true. Barely a day passes in India without there being seemingly more bad news for Kingfisher as it battles for survival. Now, more than 100 Kingfisher staff have actually said they're going to go on strike. They're mainly pilots, mainly engineers, unless they're paid. They haven't received their salaries for 4 months. And they say unless Kingfisher boss Vijay Mallya resolves the situation this morning, India time, they're just not going to go to work. It's the latest blow for this airline that's already had to ground dozens of planes, cancel dozens of flights, slash its summer schedule, and next week they're even going to have to cancel all their international flights to 8 different destinations.
Natasha, how much longer then do we think this airline can actually last? I mean, a government bailout seems to be the only option, but they don't seem to want to get involved.
No, the problem is that Kingfisher is in debt of $1.3 billion, and analysts say it's going to need $400 million right now to stay flying in the air. Now, the boss, Vijay Mallya, he's been blaming rising fuel costs and airport taxes, but critics say his strategy from the beginning has always been a questionable one. It's a low-cost airline, but it offered luxuries like in-flight meals and valet services in the airport, and since 2005, when it actually took to the air, it's never turned a profit. So now we have a situation where it's scrabbling around for funds. Foreign investors can't get involved at the moment because they're not allowed, and local investors remain extremely wary.
Natasha, thanks very much. That's Natasha Butler covering that story for us here on France 24. Let's pick up on a couple more of the day's business headlines. Total's management due to meet British safety officials later this Monday to work out how to cap a huge gas leak at a North Sea rig. The French energy giant's platform has been shut down for more than a week since the blowout. Options include injecting mud to cap the well or drilling 2 relief wells to take the excess gas. Second option is more expensive, likely to cost the firm around $3 billion.
And around 20% of flights at Paris's Orly airport are being cancelled this Monday due to an air traffic controller strike. Staff are battling a plan to streamline air traffic control in Paris and regional airports. Both Air France and EasyJet flights are affected, but the two airlines say the strike will have a limited impact on their operations. Now, it's one of the legacies of the US subprime crisis and the housing disaster there that 22% of US homes are now in negative equity. That's according to the latest figures. Millions of Americans, meanwhile, remain priced out of the housing market and simply cannot get access to mortgages. So the answer to this housing problem these days appear just go a little bit smaller in your real estate.
Little bigger than a dollhouse. Lena's home measures in at 121 square feet, with room enough for only the bare necessities. Her last house, at 832 square feet, felt too big, and she decided to downsize, radically.
I scaled down to mostly the things that I needed or loved, and so it doesn't take me much time to deal with stuff.
Living small is also about living within their means.
Housing has become a source of immobility for people, especially in this economy, and I think that one of the spurs behind the small home movement is to provide the freedom and the flexibility to not have many of your housing costs, not have many of your personal costs associated with your housing.
At the peak of the housing boom in 2007, the average American home size was just over 2,500 square feet. Tiny houses, in contrast, tend to be smaller than 1,000 square feet. They may be cheaper on the whole, but the emphasis on design and quality materials actually make them more expensive per square foot.
Because we invested, I guess, maybe in quality instead of quantity, it turns out that we have a really nice kitchen and nice bathroom.
Getting financing and regulatory approval for such unconventional property can be an issue. Rob and Chloe got their mortgage through a cooperative bank, but another challenge awaits. Now they've got a baby on the way and plans for another. Rob and Chloe will soon find out if the traditional family can also fit into their unconventional home.
I still can't get over that.
It's a little
that dormer window with a mattress.
Little tight.
What happens if you... Well, you're going to bang your head every time you get up. Tiny, isn't it? The question remains in the US housing market, Stuart, has it bottomed out in terms of the crisis? Obviously, we've had that subprime disaster that has endured, really, because credit markets have been frozen. We're going to get figures out this Monday from the US government that should show that construction of new homes has risen by 0.8%. It's pretty small, not really very impressive, but we are seeing some growth in that, but hardly the kind of figures to write home about. It really does need a big lift in construction to try and get that market moving again significantly.
I love the way the reporter started that piece with little bigger than a doll's house. I wanted to know, where do you put your doll's house?
Yeah.
You know, there's no room. All right, good stuff. More from Owen, of course, just over an hour's time. More business from him, and Lorna's got the very latest news after the break. Do stay with us.